in 1859, which I'm sure, Nancy, you remember that.
There he goes again.
Back in 1859, Charles Dickens started publishing week after week a chapter of his book, which would end up being put together in one final edition of A Tale of Two Cities. Now, I'm guessing many of us in this congregation this morning had to read this book sometime in school. If you recall, even if you have not read it, it's about the tales of France, of Paris versus London, with particular emphasis on the plight of the poor in Paris pre-Revolutionary War, during the Revolutionary War, and afterwards, compared to all of the abundance that was happening in London. Remember those famous opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities? It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Now, I can't help being a little reminiscent today, because tomorrow will mark 10 years since we arrived in Wantagh. And I would like to share with you this morning a tale of two Wantaghs. What is the best of times, and what also can be the worst of times. So 10 years ago tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. in the pitch dark, Carrie and I pulled into 1400 Polson Street in Wantagh, which is the address of the rectory right behind us here. We were tired and cranky after driving from Cleveland, Ohio, across the ridiculously long state of Pennsylvania. And in a very small little Suzuki Aereo, filled with some clothes, our plants, and our 65-year-old German Shepherd, Quentin, and the cat who was in its cage, Puck. Everyone was cranky and wanted to get out. The key had been hidden by one of our vestry members, and I remember going in and the air conditioning was on in the back and in the bedroom. He had put a table there with a couple of chairs, just, you know, the chairs that you get in the parish hall. And in the kitchen, there were a few presents. First off, there was this big, huge tub filled with non-perishable food items and cleaning items. And the name, there was a name on it that said Pounding. And I said to Carrie, oh, we gotta make sure we write Mr. and Mrs. Pounding to thank them for this. Not realizing a pounding was people giving pounds of stuff to the new clergy person. On the counter, somebody had given maps of Nassau County, Suffolk County, and the city, you know, back pre-GPS days. There was also a cutting board and a knife and a note that said, look in the refrigerator. And in the refrigerator, there was some milk and other items, and a lime, and a 6-pack of Corona. Talk about being welcomed. You know, it really was. It was the best of times. And from that moment on, we have truly felt at home in this parish family, loved and welcomed. But that's a tale of one Wantagh. Then there's a tale of the other Wantagh. Needless to say, some of the neighbors in our cul-de-sac weren't too happy that we moved in. And they showed that in various ways, particularly during the first winter and many winters to come. I remember that first big snowstorm, one of those whoppers that we can get out here, those nor'easters, where there was so much snow, and I was saying, oh my gosh, there's going to be a lot of snow to remove. And I saw a couple of the neighbors out with their snow blowers, and they were going and plowing out the sidewalk on the cul-de-sac and everyone's driveways. And they were coming, I thought, oh, this is so nice, what great neighbors. Until they got to the rectory property and stopped and left it unplowed. At first I thought, well, maybe they were expecting somebody to come and do it. Maybe that's what's always happened, so I'm not going to think anything of it. Until it happened again and again and over and over and over. In Wantagh, when I used to run, I would have many slurs yelled at me from people out of their cars. Talk about the worst times. But you know what? I'm a big boy and I can handle it. But there's a lesson in there for me, and I hope there's a lesson for all of us. And that's a lesson based on what Jesus said today in the gospel. If you welcome others, you welcome him. If you welcome the least of those among you, you're being God to somebody else. It's easy to say, as our tagline says, that we are a welcoming community of faith. But the hard thing is, we all have to look in our lives that we are a welcoming community of faith filled with individuals with each and every one of our own preconceived notions about other people. And don't you dare tell me you don't have them. Because we all do. You're at home. You see somebody start walking in your street, your neighborhood, and you know they don't belong. Maybe they look a little different than you. And so you think, maybe I should call the cops, or your heart gets a little raced inside, and you go and you lock your doors and you pretend you're not home. You're driving through Hempstead, and you say to yourself, ooh, this is not a safe neighborhood, so I'm going to lock my doors for fear of being carjacked, which is not going to happen. You're down at the train station and you see a homeless person, and you think to yourself, what are they doing in our neighborhood? They shouldn't be here, they should be in the city. You're here at worship and somebody comes through those doors who looks different, acts different, talks different. Maybe is not an Episcopalian, maybe isn't dressed the way that you would like them to be dressed. Maybe is with somebody who you don't think they should be with. Maybe they have a spiritual disability, an emotional disability, a mental disability. And instead of going up and welcoming them and embracing them, you shun. Or maybe there's somebody in this parish who you don't like, so you intentionally don't go and offer the peace to them. You turn your back when they walk by. It is so easy to do the reverse of welcome. But having been on that side, I'll tell you one thing. There's nothing that hurts more in life than that. You know, we have a sign out here that says, the Episcopal Church welcomes you. In fact, every Episcopal church has those signs. The fact of the matter is, 9 times out of 10, sadly, that's just not true. It's not true of most churches. Most churches really only want to welcome people like us. Or people perceived to be like us, with a little bit of variation and boundaries in there. But to my knowledge, none of us here are identical. Each one of us has our own faults, and I'm at the top of that list. There's a reason for somebody to look at us and consider us to be different and even an outcast. And so we have a choice to make. The choice is, are we going to live in the best of times, in the bestest of places, to be that place when somebody comes through those doors for the first time, that we don't do lip service to being a welcoming community of faith, but that we really mean it, that we embrace the other, that we go up to the other and say, who are you? Hi, my name is Christopher. You are where? So glad that you are here. To do that wacky and wild thing during the peace, which is Christ's peace, to actually cross this divide of the aisle. You know, the people over there and the people over there don't bite. You know, we're not red and blue. We're not divided that way. We're not divided the old epistle and gospel side. They need God's peace as much as you do. No matter how old or how young, no matter what their background, no matter what they look like, no matter who they sleep with, no matter if they have faith or not, we are called to welcome, because when we welcome the others, we will be welcomed ourselves by Christ. You know, about 2 or 3 years ago, things changed around in my cul-de-sac. I think they realized that I was a human being too. But one day, remember, I think it was 2 years ago, that big, huge nor'easter that hit in February that dumped 2 to 3 feet, and people got stuck on the LIE, and remember that massive snowstorm? I remember that day sleeping late, because you knew there was going to be no work the next day. Getting up in the morning and looking out, and there was one of St. Jude's parishioners with his shovel, who came to start shoveling. And I told him not to worry about it, and he says, no, I want to make a witness to the people on this street. And from that moment on, every snowstorm, we've been plowed out. From the worst of times to the best of times. My sisters and my brothers, look inside yourself today. Ask yourself, how would you want to be treated? How would you want to be welcomed? Remember, when you welcome the other, you welcome Jesus himself. I pray that as we continue to move forward in faith, to live into our mission and ministry in our neighborhoods, that we'll always be that place, to be a welcoming community of faith.